I watched my daughter's black Escalade pull into the gravel parking lot of what she'd called our weekend surprise destination, and my stomach dropped when I saw the faded sign, Mercy Hills Senior Living Facility. Rachel put the car in park, but didn't turn off the engine, just sat there gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white, staring straight ahead through the windshield. We'd been driving for 2 hours through Colorado back roads I didn't recognize, and for the last 30 minutes, she'd stopped responding to my questions about where we were going. Rachel? My voice came out smaller than I intended. Why are we stopped here? She finally turned to look at me, took off those designer sunglasses she'd been hiding behind all morning. Her eyes were dry, rehearsed. Mom, you're going to stay here for a while. The words hit me like a fist to the chest. What? This is a nice place. They have activities. It's better than you being alone in that house in Boulder. I don't understand. You said we were taking a trip. You said, I can't do this anymore. She cut me off, words tumbling out like she'd been practicing them. I can't keep worrying about you being alone. What if you fall? What if something happens and nobody finds you for days? I have a career, Mom. Marcus and I are talking about getting engaged. I can't keep dropping everything because you need help or you're lonely or... I never asked you to drop everything. My throat felt like it was closing. Rachel, I take care of myself. I'm fine at home. I don't need... If I'd asked, you would have said no. So I made the decision for you. I stared at my daughter, this stranger sitting in the driver's seat, who looked like Rachel but spoke with a voice I'd never heard before. Cold, final. Like she was explaining a business transaction instead of abandoning her 71-year-old mother at a facility 2 hours from home. You already paid them. Not a question. A realization. First month. Everything's arranged. They're expecting you inside. My hands were shaking. I looked at the building through the windshield. Peeling paint, sagging roof, plywood covering windows on the second floor. This place looked like where people went to be forgotten. Rachel, please. Can we just talk about this? There's nothing to talk about. I've made up my mind. She wouldn't look at me now. Just kept her eyes on that steering wheel like it was the only solid thing in the world. You need to get out, Mom. I have to drive back to Denver. For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't process what was happening. My daughter, the little girl I'd raised, who I'd sacrificed everything for, who'd once told me I was her best friend, was dumping me at a rundown facility in the middle of nowhere like I was a problem she'd finally solved. I could have begged, could have cried, could have refused to get out of the car. But something in me went very still, very cold. I'd spent 3 years as a widow being careful not to burden Rachel with my needs, my loneliness, my grief. I'd made myself small and undemanding because I didn't want to be the kind of mother who guilt-tripped her busy daughter. And this was how she repaid that consideration. I unbuckled my seatbelt, opened the door, got out without saying another word. Rachel popped the trunk, and I pulled out my small blue suitcase myself, the one I'd packed so carefully last night, imagining mountain cabins and quality time and finally reconnecting with my daughter. I'd been so stupid, so desperately hopeful. Mom! Rachel's voice cracked for the first time. I didn't turn around, just started walking toward that sad building with my suitcase rattling behind me on the gravel. Behind me, I heard the Escalade's engine rev, heard her back up fast and drive away, tires spraying rocks. The woman at the front desk barely looked up when I walked in. You must be Evelyn Pritchard. Your daughter called ahead. I'm Donna. I couldn't speak. Just stood there in a lobby that smelled like industrial cleaner and overcooked food, holding my suitcase and trying not to cry in front of a stranger. Donna handed me forms to sign, gave me a key to room 214, explained meal times and visiting hours in a gentle voice that said she'd seen this exact scene play out before. Other daughters, other mothers, other betrayals disguised as practicality. My room was on the second floor. 12 feet by 12 feet. A narrow bed with a thin floral bedspread. A battered dresser. One window overlooking the parking lot where Rachel had left me. This was it. This was where my daughter thought I belonged. I sat on the edge of that hard mattress and pulled out my phone with shaking hands. I could call my friend Patricia from church. She'd be horrified. Would probably drive out here immediately. Or I could call Father Michael. Or any number of people who actually cared whether I lived or died. But that wasn't the call I needed to make. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Richard Brennan, my attorney, the man who'd handled all of Harold's estate paperwork after my husband died, the man who knew every detail of my financial situation. He answered on the third ring. "Evelyn, everything all right?" "Richard, I need you to review my will, all my estate documents. I want to make some changes." "What kind of changes?" I looked around that dismal room, at the life my daughter had chosen for me without asking, without caring, and something inside me turned to steel. Major ones, starting with who inherits what. And Richard, don't tell Rachel about this call. Not yet. Understood. "Evelyn, where are you right now?" I told him. He was quiet for several seconds. "Jesus, I can come get you right now. You don't have to stay there." "I know I don't have to, but I'm going to. For a few days at least." "Why?" "Because my daughter just made a very expensive mistake, and she doesn't even know it yet." What Rachel didn't know, what she'd never bothered to ask about, was that her father and I hadn't just been careful with money. We'd been strategic. The house in Boulder she thought was worth maybe $300,000. Try $800,000. The rental properties in Fort Collins generating steady income every month. She had no idea they existed. Harold's life insurance. My investments. The comfortable retirement we'd built through decades of sacrifice and smart decisions. Rachel had looked at me and seen a helpless widow living on Social Security. A burden. A problem to be managed. She had no idea I had more money than she'd probably make in the next 10 years. And the will she'd casually asked about twice in the past year. "You've got everything in order, right, Mom? Just in case." Was about to look very different than she imagined. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "I'm sorry it had to be this way. I'll call you tomorrow once you're settled." I stared at that message, at the casual cruelty of it, the assumption that I'd just accept this, that I'd be grateful she'd bothered to send a text. I didn't respond. Just set the phone on the nightstand next to the photograph of Harold I'd packed, and sat there in the silence of that awful room, planning my next move. Because Rachel was going to come back. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but she'd come back. And when she did, she was going to discover that her mother wasn't the helpless old woman she'd assumed. That actions have consequences. That you can't just discard people who love you and expect them to smile and accept it. Rachel thought she'd solved a problem by leaving me here. She had no idea she'd just created a much bigger one. I should have known something was wrong when Rachel insisted I sit in the back seat. "More legroom, Mom," she'd said, tossing my overnight bag into the cargo area of her black Escalade. "You'll be more comfortable." I didn't argue. At 71, you learn to pick your battles, and I was too grateful for the invitation to question the seating arrangement. It had been 4 months since I'd last seen my daughter in person. A rushed lunch in Boulder, where she'd spent most of the meal responding to work emails. Before that, maybe 6 months. The calls came every few weeks, perfunctory check-ins that lasted exactly long enough for her to confirm I was still breathing and not burning the house down. So when she called Tuesday evening with genuine enthusiasm in her voice, "Mom, clear your weekend. I'm taking you somewhere special. Just us girls." I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope, maybe. Or just the desperate gratitude of a widow who'd spent too many evenings eating dinner alone while Jeopardy played to an empty room. I packed my small blue suitcase carefully that Friday night. 2 cardigans, one heavier than the other in case the mountains were cold. Comfortable slacks and my good walking shoes. The medication organizer Harold had bought me 3 years before the cancer took him. Each day's pills sorted into their little compartments. I added my rosary, the wooden one from our trip to New Mexico in 1998. Not because I'm particularly devout, but because holding those smooth beads between my fingers brings comfort when my mind won't settle. And photographs. 3 of them in a zippered pouch. Rachel at 8, gap-toothed and grinning on her first day of 3rd grade. Rachel and me at her college graduation from CU Boulder, both of us squinting into the sun. And one of Harold and me at St. John's 40 years ago, just after we'd exchanged vows, young and foolish, and so certain about everything. I barely slept that night. Lay in bed watching the oak tree outside my window filter moonlight across the ceiling, imagining where we might go. Maybe Estes Park. Rachel used to love feeding the elk there when she was small. Or Grand Lake, where Harold taught her to fish off the dock at that little cabin we'd rented every summer until she turned 16 and decided she was too old for family vacations. I pictured us sitting by a fire somewhere, talking the way we used to. Really talking. Not the careful surface conversations we'd had since Harold died, where she asked about my health and I asked about her work, and neither of us mentioned the growing silence between the words. Rachel arrived at 9 sharp Saturday morning. I was waiting on the front porch, suitcase at my feet, wearing my blue cardigan and the small silver cross necklace Harold gave me on our 40th anniversary. The Escalade gleamed in the driveway, so black it looked like it had been cut from a piece of night sky. Rachel stepped out wearing designer jeans and a cream-colored blouse that probably cost more than my grocery budget for a month. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and those enormous sunglasses covered half her face. "Ready, Mom?" She grabbed my suitcase before I could reach for it, her movements efficient, almost mechanical. "I'm excited," I said, and I meant it. "Where are we going?" "It's a surprise." She opened the rear passenger door and gestured for me to climb in. "Trust me, you're going to love it." The leather seats were cold against my legs. I buckled myself in and watched Rachel load my bag, then slide into the driver's seat. She adjusted her mirrors 3 times, checked her phone, started the engine. The radio came on, some pop station I didn't recognize, and she quickly turned it off. The silence that replaced it felt heavier than music. We pulled out of my neighborhood, past the Henderson's house with its American flag and rose bushes, past the corner where Harold and I used to walk every evening after dinner, past the little park where Rachel learned to ride a bike. I watched Boulder slide by through tinted windows, already feeling the first whisper of unease. "Traffic might be heavy heading into the mountains," Rachel said, her eyes on the road. "Saturday morning, you know." "That's fine, honey. We have all day." "Yeah," she cleared her throat. "All day." We drove west on Highway 36, the Flatirons rising red and dramatic against the blue October sky. I'd seen this view 10,000 times, but it still caught my breath. Those massive tilted rocks that looked like something God had pushed up through the earth, just to remind us how small we are. We passed through the canyon, pine trees crowding close to the road, the creek running silver beside us. Rachel drove fast, her hands tight on the wheel. Every few minutes she'd glance at the rearview mirror, but not at me, at something else. The road behind us. Her own reflection. I couldn't tell. "How's Marcus?" I asked, trying to fill the quiet. "Fine, busy with work." "What does he do again?" I can never remember. "Financial consulting." Her voice had that clipped quality it got when she didn't want to discuss something. "He's up for partner." "That's wonderful. Will you—" "Mom, I need to concentrate on the road." I fell silent. Watched the landscape change as we climbed higher. The mountain towns thinning out. The spaces between buildings growing wider. Nederland came and went. We didn't stop. I thought we might. There was a little bakery there Harold and I used to visit. Cinnamon rolls the size of dinner plates. But Rachel drove past without slowing. Are we going to Grand Lake? I asked. No. Estes Park? Mom, it's a surprise. Can you just let it be a surprise? Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. I folded my hands in my lap and went quiet, counting telephone poles to distract myself from the growing sense that this trip wasn't what I'd imagined. The medication organizer rattled in my purse every time we hit a bump. I'd forgotten to take my morning pills. The thyroid medication could wait, but I'd need the blood pressure pill by noon. We turned onto a smaller highway I didn't recognize. The asphalt here was older, cracked and patched. Fewer cars. The trees thinned into scrubland, and the mountains looked different. Less dramatic, more worn down. This wasn't tourist country. This was the kind of place people passed through on their way to somewhere else. Rachel's phone rang through the car speakers. Marcus. She hit decline without a word. You can answer it, I said. I don't mind. It's fine. Rachel, if you need to. I said it's fine. The edge in her voice silenced me again. I watched her profile, looking for the little girl who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms, who'd cried when her goldfish died, and insisted we have a funeral in the backyard, complete with a hymn she'd made up. That little girl was in there somewhere, under the designer clothes and the hardness around her mouth, wasn't she? Another turn. This road was narrower, gravel crunching under the tires, fences lined both sides, barbed wire and weathered posts leaning at angles. A few scraggly cattle grazed in brown grass. In the distance, I could see a water tower and what looked like a tiny town, maybe 3 or 4 buildings total. Where are we? I asked quietly. Rachel didn't answer. Then I saw it. On the left side of the road, set back about 50 yards, a low, sprawling building that might have been white once, but had faded to the color of old bone. The roof sagged in places. Several windows on the second floor were covered with plywood. A crooked sign near the entrance read, Mercy Hills Senior Living Facility, in letters that had lost most of their paint. Rachel slowed down, put on her turn signal, pulled into the gravel parking lot. My heart started hammering against my ribs. Rachel! What is this? She put the Escalade in park but left the engine running, stared straight ahead through the windshield. I could see her chest rising and falling with deep breaths, like she was preparing for something. Rachel! My voice came out smaller than I intended. Why are we stopped here? She finally turned to look at me, and for the first time since she'd picked me up, she took off those sunglasses. Her eyes were dry but hard, rehearsed. Mom, she said, and I heard the words before she spoke them, knew them with the terrible certainty that comes right before impact. You're going to stay here for a while. The world tilted. What? This is a nice place, clean. They have activities. It's better than you being alone in that house. Rachel, I don't understand. I thought we were taking a trip. I can't do this anymore. The words came out in a rush, like she'd been holding them back for miles. I can't keep worrying about you being alone. What if you fall? What if something happens? I have a life, Mom. A career. Marcus and I are talking about getting engaged. I can't keep dropping everything to drive to Boulder because you need help with your computer or you're lonely or... I never asked you to drop everything. My throat felt tight. Rachel, I never... You didn't have to ask. That's the problem. She grabbed the steering wheel again, knuckles going white. The guilt, Mom. Every time my phone rings, I think it's going to be a hospital or a neighbor saying something happened to you. I lie awake at night imagining you dead in that house for days before anyone finds you. I can't live like this. So you're putting me in a home. The words tasted like copper in my mouth. Without discussing it, without asking. If I'd asked, you would have said no. Of course I would have said no. Rachel, I'm not helpless. I take care of myself. I have friends. I go to church. I manage just fine. Dad's been dead for 3 years. 3 years you've been alone in that house. And every year you get a little older, a little more fragile. How long before something goes wrong? I stared at my daughter, At this stranger who looked like Rachel but spoke with a voice I didn't recognize. Cold. Logical. Like she was explaining a business decision instead of abandoning her mother on a desolate road in the middle of nowhere. "This isn't about me being alone," I said slowly. "This is about you not wanting to deal with me." Her jaw tightened. "That's not fair, isn't it?" Something was hardening inside me, crystallizing into clarity. "When was the last time you visited just to visit? Not because you felt obligated or guilty, but because you wanted to see me." "Mom." "When, Rachel?" She looked away. "I have to get back to Denver. They're expecting you inside." She gestured toward the building. "There's paperwork to sign. I already paid the first month." The first month. Like this was a gym membership. Like I was a problem she'd solved with her credit card. I could have fought. Could have refused to get out of the car. Demanded she take me home. Made a scene. Part of me wanted to. The part that was still a mother. Still believed my daughter couldn't really mean this. But another part, the part that had learned hard lessons about dignity over my 71 years, knew better. Rachel had made her choice. Fighting would only give her ammunition to justify it later. See how difficult she was being. See why I had no choice? I unbuckled my seatbelt, opened the door. The October air hit my face, colder than I'd expected. "Mom!" Rachel's voice cracked for the first time. I didn't look back at her. Walked to the rear of the Escalade and waited until she popped the cargo door. Pulled out my blue suitcase myself. It felt heavier than it had that morning. Or maybe I felt weaker. I took the wooden rosary from my purse and wrapped it around my right hand, the beads pressing into my palm. "I'll call you," Rachel said from inside the car. "Once you're settled, we'll talk." I still didn't look at her. Just nodded once and started walking toward the entrance of Mercy Hills Senior Living Facility, pulling my suitcase behind me across gravel that crunched like broken bones under my feet. Behind me, I heard the Escalade's engine rev. Heard gravel spray as she backed up too fast. Heard her drive away. I made it to the front steps before my legs started shaking. Made it through the door before the tears came. A woman at a desk, heavyset, maybe 60, wearing scrubs covered in cartoon cats, looked up with an expression that said she'd seen this scene before. "You must be Evelyn," she said, not unkindly. "Your daughter called ahead. I'm Donna." I tried to speak, but couldn't. Just stood there in the fluorescent-lit lobby with its stained carpet and artificial plants, clutching my rosary and trying to understand how my life had collapsed so completely in the span of 15 minutes. "Let's get you signed in," Donna said gently. "Then I'll show you to your room. You can rest. There's no rush for anything else." I followed her to the desk, signed papers I didn't read. Watched her hand me a key attached to a plastic tag with the number 214 written in permanent marker. Heard her explain meal times and visiting hours and activities as if any of it mattered. "Your room's on the 2nd floor," she said. "There's an elevator, but the stairs are faster if you're able." I took the stairs. Needed the movement, the focus of lifting one foot after another. The stairwell smelled like pine sol and something else. That particular scent of old buildings and older people, of lives winding down. 2nd floor. A hallway with beige walls and doors lie spaced too close together. 214 was near the end, next to a window that overlooked the parking lot where Rachel had abandoned me. The room was exactly what I'd expected. Twin bed with a thin floral bedspread, battered wooden dresser, narrow closet, a single window with Venetian blinds, an ancient television bolted to the wall. 12 feet by 12 feet of institutional loneliness. I set my suitcase on the bed and sat down beside it. The mattress was hard. I could hear a television playing somewhere, too loud. Some game show where people screamed over prizes. Someone coughed wetly in the next room. The radiator clanked. This was it. This was where my daughter thought I belonged. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and looked at the screen for a long moment. I could call Patricia, my friend from church. She'd be horrified, would probably drive out here immediately. Or Judith from my book club. Or even Father Michael at St. John's. Any of them would help, but that wasn't the call I needed to make. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Richard Brennan, attorney at law. Harold and I had used Richard for 23 years. Our wills, the deed transfers on the rental properties, Harold's estate after he died. Richard knew every detail of our financial life. He answered on the third ring. "Evelyn, how are you? I haven't heard from you in months." "Richard." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "I need you to review my estate documents. All of them. I want to make some changes." A pause. "Is everything all right?" "No," I said quietly. "Everything is not all right, but it will be." I told him where I was, what Rachel had done. He listened without interrupting, the way good lawyers do. And when I finished, he was silent for several seconds. "Evelyn," he said finally, his voice gentle but firm. "I can have you out of there in an hour. My wife and I will come get you ourselves. You don't have to stay there." "I know I don't have to, but I'm going to, for now." "Why?" I looked around the small room, at the life my daughter thought I deserved. "Because I need to think, and pray, and decide what happens next." "What do you want me to do with the documents?" "The will," I said. "The one that leaves everything to Rachel. I want you to put that on hold. Draft a new version. Don't file it yet. Just have it ready. And Richard, don't tell her about this call. Not until I'm ready." "Understood." Another pause. "Evelyn, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. Rachel doesn't know what she has in you." After we hung up, I sat very still on that hard bed and let the full weight of it settle over me. My daughter, the little girl I'd rocked through nightmares, who'd held my hand crossing streets, who'd once told me I was her best friend, had driven me 2 hours into the mountains and dumped me like furniture she no longer wanted. The rage came first, hot and righteous, burning through my chest. How dare she? How dare she treat me like a burden, like a problem to solve, like I was already dead and just didn't know it yet. Then the grief, howling and bottomless, for the relationship I'd thought we had, for the future I'd imagined where Rachel and I grew closer as she matured, where maybe there'd be grandchildren someday, and family dinners and the kind of bond my mother and I had shared. And finally, underneath everything else, something harder, colder, a spine I'd forgotten I had, forged during years of raising a child alone while Harold worked 12-hour days, of managing a household on a tight budget, of watching my husband die and finding a way to keep living anyway. Rachel thought I was helpless, fragile, a problem that could be solved with a checkbook and some paperwork. She had no idea what she'd just done. I stood up and began unpacking my suitcase, hung my cardigans in the narrow closet, placed Harold's photograph on the nightstand beside the bed, set my medication organizer on the dresser. Ordinary actions, methodical and calming. Then I knelt beside the bed, something I hadn't done since Harold died, and closed my eyes. I wasn't sure what I was praying for. Guidance, maybe, or strength, or just the ability to get through whatever came next without losing myself completely. When I opened my eyes again, the room looked exactly the same, but something in me had shifted, settled. I'd been knocked down, but I wasn't broken. Not yet. Not ever, if I could help it. I pulled out my phone again and opened the photo album. Scrolled through years of pictures until I found the one I needed. Rachel at 5 years old, missing her 2 front teeth, laughing so hard her eyes had disappeared into crescents of pure joy. That little girl was still in there somewhere. I had to believe that. Had to hold on to the possibility that this wasn't the end of us. But belief without action is just wishful thinking. Harold used to say that, usually when I'd talk about problems instead of solving them. If I wanted any chance of getting my daughter back, the real daughter, not this stranger in designer jeans who looked at me with calculated indifference, I needed to show her something she'd apparently forgotten. I needed to show her that I was still Evelyn Marie Pritchard, that I'd survived a difficult childhood, a challenging marriage, widowhood, and 71 years of life's various cruelties and joys, that I was more than a problem to be managed, and I needed to do it in a way she'd never forget. The window beside my bed overlooked the parking lot and the road beyond. I stood there as the afternoon light turned golden, watching for headlights that didn't come. Somewhere in Denver, Rachel was probably telling Marcus how she'd finally handled the mum situation. Maybe even feeling relieved, free. She had no idea the situation was just beginning. The sun was setting when Rachel's Escalade came tearing back into the parking lot, spraying gravel like shrapnel. I'd been in my room for exactly 4 hours and 37 minutes. I knew because I'd been watching the clock on the wall, the one with the cracked plastic cover and second hand that stuttered every 12 seconds. I'd unpacked, prayed, sat by the window watching the road, waited. I'd known she'd come back. The only question was how long it would take. From my second-floor window, I watched her slam the car into park and practically fall out of the driver's seat. Even from this distance, I could see the panic in her movements, the way she stumbled in her expensive heels, how she grabbed the door frame to steady herself. She stood there for a moment, phone pressed to her ear, pacing tight circles. Then she threw the phone into the car and ran toward the entrance. I didn't move from my position by the window, just stood there with my arms crossed, watching my daughter unravel. The facility had been quiet since I'd arrived. Most residents seemed to keep to their rooms or cluster in the common area on the first floor, where a television played at volume meant for the hearing impaired. I'd met exactly 3 people: Donna at the front desk, a trembling man in a wheelchair who'd nodded at me in the hallway, and a woman named Betty who'd knocked on my door to tell me dinner was at 5:30 and to watch out for the meatloaf because it sits heavy. I'd skipped dinner, wasn't hungry, had instead used the time to make a second call, this one to Patricia Chen, my friend from St. John's. Patricia was 73, sharp as a tack, and had been widowed even longer than me. She was also the biggest gossip in Boulder, which made her either the worst or the best person to tell, depending on your perspective. "Evelyn?" She'd answered on the first ring, like she'd been waiting. "I tried calling your house. Where are you?" I told her. Everything. And Patricia, bless her, responded exactly as I'd known she would. "That ungrateful little—" She caught herself. "I'm sorry, I know she's your daughter. But Evelyn, this is unconscionable. Does anyone else know?" "Just you. And my attorney." "Your attorney?" A pause. Oh my, you're not—" "I'm considering my options, Patricia, that's all." "Good. You should. That girl needs to understand." She stopped again. When she spoke next, her voice was softer. "Are you all right? Really?" "No," I'd admitted. "But I will be." After we hung up, I'd sat very still and thought about what Patricia would do with that information. By tomorrow morning, half of St. John's Parish would know what Rachel had done. Father Michael would probably call, concerned. The ladies from the Rosary group would be scandalized. And Rachel would hear about it from someone, somehow. The whispers would reach her. But that wasn't why I'd called Patricia. Not entirely. I'd called because I needed someone to know where I was, to witness this, to make it real. Now, watching Rachel burst through the entrance below, I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not quite satisfaction, not quite vindication, something harder, like ice forming over deep water. I heard her voice echo up the stairwell before I saw her. "Which room? Second floor? Where?" Donna's response was muffled, but I heard footsteps pounding up the stairs, too fast, uneven. Then she was in the hallway, and I could hear her breathing, ragged and panicked. The knock on my door was frantic. Mom, open the door, please." I waited. Let her knock again. Let the desperation in her voice build. "Mom, I know you're in there. Please, we need to talk. I crossed to the door slowly, my hand on the knob, took a breath, then opened it. Rachel looked wrecked. Her sleek ponytail had come half undone, strands of auburn hair sticking to her tear-streaked face. Mascara smudged under her eyes. Her cream blouse had a stain on the collar. Coffee, maybe. Or wine. She stared at me with red-rimmed eyes full of something that might have been remorse, or might have just been fear. Mom. The word came out as a sob. She tried to grab my hands, but I pulled back. Mom, please. I'm so sorry. I wasn't thinking. I panicked. I made a terrible mistake. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I was seeing my daughter clearly for the first time in years, not through the lens of maternal love or hopeful delusion, but as she actually was, a 34-year-old woman who'd learned to calculate cost-benefit analyses for everything, including her own mother. "Come in," I said quietly, and closed the door. She stumbled into the room, and I heard her breath catch when she saw how small it was. The narrow bed, the battered furniture, the window overlooking nothing but gravel and scrubland. This was where she'd put me. Maybe she hadn't seen the room when she'd arranged everything. Or maybe she had, and it simply hadn't mattered. "Sit down," I said, gesturing to the single chair beside the dresser. Rachel sat, perched on the edge like she might need to run. I remained standing, my back to the window, my hands folded in front of me. The posture I used to use when she was a teenager and had broken curfew or lied about homework. The one that meant we were going to talk, really talk, and there would be no shortcuts or easy exits. "When did you decide?" I asked. "What? When did you decide to bring me here?" "A week ago." "A month?" She looked at her hands. 2 weeks. "And you didn't think to discuss it with me?" "I knew you'd say no. So you lied. Told me we were taking a trip. Let me pack a suitcase and get excited. Drove me 2 hours into the middle of nowhere and dropped me off like..." My voice broke slightly. I steadied it. "Like I was something you didn't want anymore." "That's not..." "Mom, it wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Rachel? Explain it to me." She finally looked up, and there was real anguish in her eyes. "I was scared. I am scared. Every time my phone rings, I think it's going to be bad news. That you fell, or had a stroke, or died alone in that house, and nobody found you for days. I dream about it, Mom. About getting a call from the police asking me to identify your body. So instead of talking to me about your fears, you made a unilateral decision to institutionalize me. I thought you'd be safer here. That there'd be people checking on you, nurses, activities. Did you visit this place before you brought me here?" Silence. "Did you, Rachel?" "No." Barely a whisper. "So you called some facility you found online, paid them money, and drove me here without once considering what my life would actually be like in this place." I wasn't thinking clearly." "No," I agreed. "You weren't. You were thinking about yourself, about your convenience, about eliminating a source of anxiety from your life so you could focus on your career and your boyfriend and all the things that actually matter to you. That's not fair, isn't it?" I moved closer and she flinched. "When was the last time you visited me just to visit? Not out of obligation or guilt, but because you wanted to spend time with your mother." She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "I've been busy. Work has been crazy. And Marcus is always going to be busy. Work is always going to be crazy. There will always be reasons, Rachel. The question is whether I'm a priority or just another item on your to-do list that you finally decided to check off." The tears were flowing freely now, and part of me, the mother part, the soft part, that still remembered nursing her through chickenpox and heartbreak, wanted to comfort her. But I held myself still. This conversation was 3 years overdue, maybe longer. Maybe it started the first time she'd rolled her eyes at my stories, or cut a phone call short, or looked at me with that mixture of pity and impatience that adult children sometimes develop for their aging parents. "I got a call," Rachel said suddenly, "about an hour after I got back to Denver, from Patricia Chen." Ah, so it had been Patricia who'd triggered this, faster than I'd expected. "She told me I should be ashamed of myself," Rachel continued, her voice thick, "that the whole parish was going to hear about what I did, that Father Michael would probably want to speak with me." She laughed bitterly. "Like I'm a child who needs to be scolded by the priest." "Are you? A child who needs to be scolded? I'm 34 years old. Then act like it." The sharpness in my voice surprised us both. "Take responsibility for what you did, not because Patricia called you, or because you're worried about what people will think, but because it was wrong." "I know it was wrong." She stood up, agitated, pacing in the small space. "That's why I'm here. I came back as soon as I realized..." "Realized what? That I'm not as helpless as you thought?" She stopped pacing, stared at me. "What did you do?" "What any intelligent woman would do. I called my attorney." The color drained from Rachel's face. "Your attorney." "Richard Brennan. You remember him? He handled your father's estate." "Why?" She sat back down heavily. "Why did you call Richard?" "To review my will, my properties, my financial arrangements, to make sure everything is in order." "You're cutting me out." "Not a question. A realization. You're cutting me out of the will." I didn't answer directly. "Did you know I own 2 rental properties in Fort Collins?" She blinked. "What?" "Bought them with your father in 1997. Small houses near the university. They bring in about $3,600 a month in rental income. After expenses, that's about $20,000 a year in profit." Rachel was staring at me like I'd started speaking a foreign language. "And the house in Boulder," I continued. "Do you know what it's worth?" "I don't... maybe 300,000? Try 800,000. The market in Boulder has been very good to us. Your father and I paid off the mortgage in 2003. No debt, just pure equity." "I didn't... you never said..." "You never asked. You assumed I was scraping by on your father's pension and Social Security, that I needed your charity, your management, that I'd be grateful for whatever scraps of attention you had time to give me." Rachel's hands were shaking. "How much? How much what? How much money do you have?" I smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. "Enough that you didn't need to worry about me being a financial burden. Enough that I could have hired private care if I'd needed it. Enough that this," I gestured around the dingy room, "was completely unnecessary." "Oh my God!" She put her face in her hands. "Oh my God, I thought... Marcus said..." "Marcus?" I felt my eyebrows rise. What does Marcus have to do with this? Silence. But the kind of silence that speaks volumes. "Rachel." My voice went very quiet. "Did Marcus suggest you put me in a home?" "He didn't suggest. He just mentioned that his grandmother went into assisted living and how much easier it made things for his mother. How she didn't have to worry anymore. And I was so tired, Mom. So tired of worrying about you and feeling guilty and he mentioned that you'd probably inherit eventually. Didn't he? That it would be helpful to have your financial situation settled before you two got more serious." The look on her face told me everything. I sat down on the bed, suddenly feeling every one of my 71 years. "So this wasn't just about your anxiety. It was about money. About making sure your inheritance was secure before you merged your life with Marcus's." No, that's not..." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" "He just pointed out that if you needed care eventually, it could eat up the estate. That it was better to plan ahead, to make arrangements before there was a crisis." He was being practical. Practical? I tasted the word. He was being practical about my money. "It's not..." "Mom, that's not why I did this. I was genuinely worried about you. I'm sure you were. And I'm sure it was very convenient that the solution to your worry also happen to protect your financial interests. Rachel stood up again, backing toward the door. I came here to apologize, to bring you home. What do you want from me? What did I want? I looked at my daughter, this woman I'd raised who I'd loved with a fierceness that had sometimes frightened me, who'd apparently learned to see me as a liability rather than a person, and I didn't know how to answer. I want you to understand, I said finally, to really understand what you did today. I do understand. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Are you sorry because you realized you were wrong? Or are you sorry because you found out I have money? She flinched like I'd slapped her. That's not fair. Fair? I stood up, and something in my movement made her step back. You want to talk about fair? You drove me 2 hours to abandon me in this place. You didn't ask what I wanted. Didn't consider my feelings. Didn't even bother to visit the facility first to make sure it was decent. You made a decision about my life without including me in it. And now you want me to forgive you because you drove back here in a panic. That's not how this works. Then what do you want? Tell me what you want and I'll do it. I looked at her for a long moment, saw the desperation there, the fear, the dawning realization that she'd miscalculated badly. And underneath all of it, somewhere deep, I saw a glimpse of the little girl who used to think I hung the moon. I want time, I said. I want you to go home and think about what you did. Really think about it. Not about the money, not about what Patricia or Father Michael or anyone else thinks, but about the fact that you looked at your mother and decided she was disposable. I never thought you were disposable. Then what did you think? She couldn't answer. Stood there with tears streaming down her face, mouth opening and closing, searching for words that wouldn't come. Go home, Rachel, I said quietly. And when you figure out the answer to that question, when you can tell me honestly why you did what you did today, then we'll talk. You're staying here? Disbelief in her voice. Mom, you don't have to stay here. I'll take you home right now, please. I'm staying. For a few days at least. Why? Why would you stay in this awful place? I almost smiled. Because I need to figure some things out, too. About who I am now. About what I want the rest of my life to look like. And I can't do that with you hovering over me, trying to fix what you broke. I don't know how to leave you here. Yes, you do. You did it 4 hours ago. You can do it again. She moved toward me, arms outstretched, and I let her hug me. Felt her body shake with sobs against my shoulder. Smelled her expensive perfume mixed with sweat and fear. And felt absolutely nothing. That was the worst part. Standing there while my daughter wept and feeling like I was hugging a stranger. When she finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and swollen. I love you, Mom. I know you do. In your own way. What does that mean? It means you need to go home. It means we both need time. And it means... I held her gaze, made sure she was really hearing me. That nothing is decided yet. Not about my will. Not about our relationship. Not about anything. You made a choice today that has consequences. We'll figure out what those consequences are. Together. But not tonight. She nodded slowly, wiping at her face with the back of her hand. Can I call you? Give me a few days. A few days? Mom, I can't just... Yes, you can. You managed to not call me for weeks at a time before this. You can manage a few more days. The bob hit home. I saw her flinch, saw the realization cross her face that I was keeping score, that I remembered every missed call, every shortened visit, every time she'd made me feel like an inconvenience. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll wait. She walked to the door, moving like someone in a dream, paused with her hand on the knob. Richard, your attorney, is he really changing your will? That's between me and Richard. So it's true. You're cutting me out. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. She opened her door, and the sounds of the facility rushed in. That too loud television, someone coughing, the clank of a meal cart. She stood in the doorway, backlit by the harsh fluorescent lights of the hallway, and for a moment she looked exactly like she had at 16, when I'd grounded her for sneaking out, and she'd looked at me with that same mixture of anger and hurt and confusion. "I never meant to hurt you," she said. "I believe you." "But you did." And then she was gone, footsteps echoing down the hallway, down the stairs, out into the parking lot. I went back to my window and watched her stand by her car for several minutes, phone to her ear again. Watched her finally get in, sit there with her head on the steering wheel. Watched her eventually drive away, slower this time, taillights fading into the gathering dark. I stood at that window for a long time after she left, watching the sky turn from purple to black. A few stars came out, hard and bright in the clear mountain air. In the distance, I could see lights from a town, probably the one with the water tower I'd seen earlier. People living their lives, eating dinner, watching television, having normal evenings that didn't involve their children abandoning them. There was a knock on my door. I turned to find Donna standing there looking concerned. "You okay, honey? Heard you had a visitor." "I'm fine." "That your daughter? The one who brought you?" "Yes." Donna's expression said she'd seen this movie before and knew how it ended. "She coming back for you?" "I don't know yet." "Well," she handed me a paper plate covered in plastic wrap. "You missed dinner, but I saved you some pot roast. Betty was wrong about the meatloaf. We had pot roast tonight. It's actually pretty good." I took the plate, touched by the kindness. "Thank you. You need anything, I'm here until 11. Night shift is Gerald? He's quiet but good in an emergency." She paused. "This place isn't much, but we take care of people. You don't have to be scared." "I'm not scared," I said, and realized it was true. After Donna left, I sat on the bed and unwrapped the pot roast. It was surprisingly decent. Tender meat, carrots, potatoes in gravy. I ate mechanically, not tasting much, my mind elsewhere. I kept thinking about Rachel's face when she realized I wasn't the helpless widow she'd imagined. The shock, the calculation, and yes, the genuine remorse underneath all of it. She was sorry. I believed that. But was she sorry for the right reasons? That was the question I needed to answer before I decided anything else. My phone buzzed. A text from Richard. "Please confirm you want me to proceed with the new documents. I can have them ready by Wednesday." I stared at the message for a long time. This was it. The moment where I decided whether to truly punish Rachel for what she'd done, or whether to leave the door open for redemption. Harold would have known what to do. He'd always been better at the hard decisions. Would have looked at this situation with his practical engineer's mind and calculated the right course of action. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine what he'd say. "She's scared, Evie. Our girl's scared, and she handled it badly. But she's still our girl." But then another voice, my mother's voice, from somewhere deep in memory. "People will treat you exactly how you teach them to treat you. Show her what you're made of." I looked at Harold's photograph on the nightstand, at his kind face, his patient eyes. We'd been married for 43 years, and in all that time, he'd never once made me feel like a burden. Even at the end, when the cancer had hollowed him out and he could barely speak, he'd held my hand and thanked me for staying. "I don't know what to do," I whispered to his picture. "I don't know how to fix this." But maybe that was the point. Maybe this wasn't something I could fix. Maybe Rachel needed to do the fixing. Maybe the most loving thing I could do right now was let her sit with the consequences of her choices, really feel them, until she understood what she'd risked losing. I picked up my phone and typed back to Richard. "Wait, don't file anything yet, but keep the documents ready. I'll let you know." His response came immediately. "Understood. Call any time. Talia sends her love." I set the phone aside and finished my pot roast. Then I brushed my teeth in the tiny bathroom down the hall. 4 sinks, 3 working, 1 stall with a broken lock. and changed into my nightgown. The sheets on the bed were thin but clean. The pillow was flat. Through the walls, I could hear someone snoring, someone else's television playing too loud. This wasn't my home, wasn't my life. But for now, for these few days at least, it was where I needed to be. I pulled out my rosary and held it in the dark, fingers finding the familiar beads. Didn't pray exactly, just held them. Let their smoothness calm my racing thoughts. Tomorrow I'd wake up in this strange bed. Tomorrow I'd figure out what came next. Tomorrow I'd start deciding what kind of relationship, if any, I wanted with the daughter who'd driven me here. But tonight, I just needed to breathe, to survive, to remember that I was Evelyn Marie Pritchard, and I'd survived worse things than this. Though at the moment, lying in the dark in a facility for the forgotten, I couldn't quite remember what those worse things had been. I stayed at Mercy Hills for 3 days, not because I had to, but because I needed to understand something about myself, about what I was willing to accept and what I wasn't. The first morning, I woke to pale sunlight filtering through Venetian blinds and momentarily forgot where I was. Then I heard the meal cart clanking in the hallway, smelled industrial coffee, and something sweet, maybe pancakes, and remembered the small room, the thin mattress, the daughter who'd left me here. I got dressed slowly, chose my blue cardigan even though it wasn't particularly cold. It had been Harold's favorite. "Brings out your eyes," he used to say, though my eyes were just plain brown and the cardigan was just plain blue. But I wore it anyway, like armor. Breakfast was in the dining hall on the first floor, a long room with fluorescent lights and tables that seated 6. Most residents ate alone, hunched over trays, chewing methodically. I took a seat by the window and picked at scrambled eggs that had the texture of rubber. "You're new." Autor, the woman across from me, had wispy white hair and remarkably blue eyes. "I'm Dorothy. Room 203. Evelyn, 214. Your family put you here?" I hesitated. "My daughter." Dorothy nodded like this explained everything. "Mine too. 3 kids, and not one of them could be bothered to make room. So here I am." She took a bite of toast. "You planning to stay?" "I don't think so." "Good. This place..." She looked around, lowered her voice. "It's not terrible. Donna's kind. Food's edible, but it's where people come when their families don't want them anymore. You got somewhere else to go? You should go." After breakfast, I called Patricia. She answered immediately, voice tight with concern. "Evelyn, thank God. Are you still at that place?" I've been beside myself. Half the parish knows and Father Michael wants to... "Patricia." I stopped her gently. "I'm all right. And yes, I'm still here." "Why? Rachel came back, didn't she?" I called her myself, told her exactly what I thought of. She came back. We talked. I asked her to give me some time. A long pause. Time for what? To figure out what I want, what I'm willing to forgive. "Evelyn." Patricia's voice softened. "She's your daughter. Of course you'll forgive her." "Maybe. But forgiveness doesn't mean pretending this didn't happen. It doesn't mean going back to the way things were." "What are you saying?" I looked out the window at the scrubland, the distant mountains. "I'm saying I'm tired, Patricia. Tired of being convenient. Tired of being grateful for scraps of attention. Tired of pretending it doesn't hurt when she treats me like an obligation instead of a person." "So what will you do?" "I don't know yet. That's why I'm still here." That afternoon, I went for a walk. The facility sat on the edge of nothing, just open land and empty highway. I walked along the shoulder of the road for maybe half a mile, my shoes crunching on gravel, wind pulling at my hair. Thought about all the choices that had led to this moment. Harold dying. That was where it started, really. Before the cancer, Rachel had been different. Still busy, still ambitious, but warmer. She'd call on Sundays, sometimes drive up for dinner. After the funeral, something had shifted, like she couldn't look at me without seeing his absence. without seeing her own mortality reflected back. Or maybe I was being too generous. Maybe she'd always been this way, and I just hadn't wanted to see it. My phone rang. Rachel. I let it go to voicemail, wasn't ready yet. 10 minutes later, it rang again. This time, I answered. Mom. Relief flooded her voice. You answered. I wasn't sure. You have 3 minutes, Rachel. I'm in the middle of something. I just wanted to check on you. Make sure you're okay. I'm fine. Are you still at Mercy Hills? Yes. Mom, please, come home. I'll drive up right now. We can... Rachel, do you remember your 8th birthday? The sudden shift confused her. What? Your 8th birthday? Do you remember what you wanted? No, why does that matter? You wanted a bicycle. A pink one with streamers on the handlebars and a white basket. We couldn't afford it. Your father had just been laid off from the plant, and we were barely covering bills. But you wanted it so badly. Talked about it for months. Mom, I don't understand what... Your father picked up extra work. Weekends, evenings, anything he could find. Roofing jobs in the summer heat. And I took in sewing. Remember Mrs. Patterson's alterations? Made 27 dresses that spring. Charged $5 each. We saved every penny for 3 months. I remember the bike, Rachel said quietly. It was beautiful. And do you remember what you said when we gave it to you? When you saw us standing in the driveway that morning with that pink bicycle? Silence. You said, "Thank you for loving me enough to sacrifice." You were 8 years old, Rachel. 8. And you understood that love requires sacrifice. That it's not just a feeling. It's a choice you make every single day to put someone else first. I heard her crying softly on the other end. When was the last time you sacrificed anything for me? I asked. Not money. Not a phone call squeezed between meetings. But actual sacrifice. Time, attention, comfort, convenience. I've been trying. I know you're busy. I know you have a demanding job and a relationship and a life. But Rachel, I'm your mother. And somewhere along the way, you forgot that love is supposed to flow both directions. I'm sorry. Her voice broke. Mom, I'm so sorry, you're right. You're absolutely right. I got so wrapped up in my own life that I forgot to see you. Really see you. I need to know it won't happen again. It won't. I swear it won't. I need more than promises, Rachel. I need to see change. Real change. What can I do? Tell me what to do, and I'll do it. I watched a hawk circle overhead, riding thermals. Come see me. Tomorrow. Not to take me home. I'm not ready for that yet. Just come sit with me. Talk to me. Listen to me. No phone. No checking the time. No rushing off to the next thing. Just be with me. Okay. She said it immediately. Okay. What time? 10 o'clock. We'll have coffee in the common room. I'll be there. After we hung up, I kept walking until my legs ached. Thought about Dorothy's words at breakfast. This is where people come when their families don't want them anymore. But that wasn't quite true. This was where people came when they forgot they had the power to demand better. I wasn't helpless, wasn't dependent, wasn't the fragile old woman Rachel had imagined. And I needed her to understand that, not through anger or punishment, but through boundaries, through consequences, through showing her who I actually was, not who she'd assumed I'd become. That night I called Richard again. Don't file the new will, I told him. Not yet, but I want you to do something else. Name it. Set up a trust for Rachel. She'll get everything eventually. The house, the rentals, the investments. But it goes into a trust that she can't access until certain conditions are met. What kind of conditions? Monthly visits. For a year. At least 2 hours each visit. And I get to determine if they count. If she's present, engaged, actually spending time with me, not just checking a box. Richard was quiet for a moment. That's unusual. But I can do it, you're sure? I'm sure. She needs to understand that relationships require maintenance, that you can't just show up when it's convenient and expect everything to be fine. And if she doesn't meet the conditions, then the trust donates everything to charity. St. John's, maybe, or a hospice program. Something meaningful. Evelyn, she's going to be upset, probably, but she'll survive, and maybe she'll learn something. Rachel arrived at 9:45 the next morning, 15 minutes early. I watched from my window as she parked and sat in her car, checking her reflection in the mirror, taking deep breaths, preparing. When she came into the common room, she looked different, softer. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair in a loose ponytail. No designer labels, no armor. "Hi, Mom." She sat beside me on the worn couch, hands folded in her lap. "Hi, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" Truthfully, still hurt, still angry, but also, hopeful. She nodded. "I brought pictures. Thought maybe we could look through them together. Remember when things were good?" She pulled out her phone, and for the next 2 hours we scrolled through photos. Rachel as a toddler, covered in mud from the garden. Her high school graduation. The trip to San Francisco when she was 12. Thanksgivings and Christmases and ordinary Tuesdays. A whole life documented in images. "I forgot how much Dad loved that garden," Rachel said, smiling at a photo of Harold kneeling in the tomato patch. "He'd spend hours out there. He found it peaceful. Said it was his church. And you!" She stopped on a photo of me at 50, laughing at something off camera. "You look so happy here." I was. That was the year you got accepted to CU. We threw a party in the backyard, remember? Invited half the neighborhood. I remember. Her voice went soft. I remember feeling so loved, so supported, like I could do anything because you believed in me. I still believe in you, Rachel. Even after what I did. I took her hand. Especially after what you did. Because you came back. Because you're here now. Trying. That takes courage. She squeezed my hand, tears sliding down her cheeks. I want to be better. I want to be the daughter you deserve. Then be present. That's all I ask. Be present in my life. Not just when it's easy or convenient, but consistently. Show up. I will. I promise. We sat there for a while longer, just holding hands. Around us, the facility continued its slow rhythms, residents shuffling past, the television playing its endless loop of game shows, someone in the kitchen clattering dishes. But in our small corner, something was healing. "Mom," Rachel said eventually. "I talked to Marcus about what happened, and he feels terrible. He says he never meant for me to, that he was just trying to help me solve a problem. But he realizes now how awful that sounds. How awful it was." "What did you tell him?" "That my mother isn't a problem to be solved. That I need to reevaluate my priorities. That if he can't understand that, then maybe we're not right for each other." I looked at her carefully. "And what did he say?" "He understood. Actually, he offered to come apologize to you himself." "That won't be necessary." "But Rachel," I held her gaze, "you need to make your own decisions, not based on what Marcus thinks, or what I think, or what's most convenient. Based on what's right, what honors the people you love." I'm learning that. Slowly. On the third day, I packed my blue suitcase. Dorothy knocked on my door as I was folding my cardigans. "Heading home?" she asked. "Yes. Good for you. Hold on to that girl of yours. Make her understand what she's got." "I'm trying. My daughter hasn't visited in 8 months." Dorothy's voice was matter-of-fact, but I heard the pain underneath. "Keep yours close, Evelyn. Don't let her forget again." Rachel picked me up at noon, helped me carry my suitcase to the car. This time, I sat in the front seat. This time, she drove carefully, checking her mirrors, staying 5 miles under the speed limit. "You nervous?" I asked, terrified. "What if I mess up again?" "You probably will. We all do. But the difference now is that you know what's at stake. We drove back through those mountain passes, past the same small towns and pine forests. But everything looked different going home. Brighter, somehow. More beautiful. The October leaves were turning gold, and the sky was so blue it hurt to look at directly. When we pulled into my driveway in Boulder, Rachel turned off the engine and just sat there. "What?" I asked. "I'm trying to memorize this. How it feels to bring you home instead of leaving you somewhere. I never want to forget this feeling." "Good. Don't." She carried my suitcase inside, even though I told her I could manage, helped me unpack, made tea in my kitchen while I settled back into my favorite chair, the one by the window where I could see Harold's garden. "Mom," Rachel said, bringing me a cup, "I want to make a commitment to you. A real one." "What kind of commitment?" "Every Sunday, dinner together. Here at your house, or out somewhere, or at my place. It doesn't matter. But every Sunday, no exceptions, unless there's an actual emergency. And one phone call a week that's not rushed, where we actually talk." I sipped my tea. "That sounds nice. But Rachel, you understand this can't just be temporary? Can't be until the guilt fades and then we slide back into old patterns?" "I know. That's why I'm saying it out loud, making it official. Hold me to it." "I will." She sat across from me, and we drank our tea in comfortable silence. Outside, a neighbor walked past with a golden retriever. The afternoon sun slanted through the window, warming the room. Everything was exactly as I'd left it 3 days ago, but somehow, it all felt different now. "I met with Richard yesterday," I said finally. Rachel looked up, fear flickering across her face. "And? I've set up a trust. Everything I have goes to you eventually, but with conditions." "Conditions?" "Monthly visits, for 1 year. Real visits, Rachel. 2 hours minimum. If you fulfill that commitment, the trust releases and you inherit everything normally. If you don't, then you donate it to charity." She finished the thought, nodding slowly. "That's fair. You're not angry? How could I be angry? You're giving me a chance to prove myself, to show you I mean what I say." She set down her teacup. "Thank you for that. For not just cutting me out, for believing I can be better. I'm your mother. Believing in you is what I do." That Sunday, Rachel came for dinner. The next Sunday, too. Then the next. The first few visits were careful, tentative. Both of us learning how to be with each other again, how to bridge the gap that had opened between us. But slowly, week by week, something began to shift. She started telling me about work in detail, not just surface summaries, about her frustrations with her boss, her excitement over a new campaign she was developing. I told her about the book club I'd joined, about Patricia's ongoing drama with her neighbor, about the new coffee shop downtown that made lattes almost as good as the place Harold and I used to go. We laughed together, cried together, argued occasionally about politics or family history. But we showed up, both of us, consistently. 3 months in, Rachel brought Marcus to Sunday dinner. I watched him carefully, this man who'd influenced my daughter's worst decision. He was nervous, polite, asked questions about Harold and looked genuinely interested in the answers. After dinner, while Rachel did dishes, he asked to speak with me privately. "Mrs. Pritchard," he said, "I owe you an apology. What I said to Rachel about planning ahead, about managing family obligations, I should have encouraged her to talk to you, not make decisions for you. I'm sorry." I studied him, saw genuine regret in his eyes. "Do you love my daughter?" "Very much." "Then help her be a better person. Don't make it easier for her to avoid hard things. Make it easier for her to do the right thing." "I will. I promise." 6 months into our new routine, Rachel showed up with paint swatches. "What are these for?" I asked. "Your kitchen. It needs updating. I thought maybe we could do it together. I'll take a week off work and we'll paint, like we used to when I was a teenager, and you'd give me the roller and let me pick the colors." "Rachel, that's not necessary." I know it's not necessary. I want to. Let me do this. Please. So we painted. 5 days of taping edges and rolling walls and laughing when I got blue paint in my hair. Rachel took photos, posted them to social media with captions about quality time with her mom. Her friends commented, "This is so sweet. Lucky lady. I should do this with my mom." "You're setting a good example," I told her. Or maybe I'm just finally growing up. On a Tuesday in March, Rachel called during work hours, which she never did. My heart jumped. Had something happened? "Mom, are you sitting down?" "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Something's right," Marcus proposed. "Oh, sweetheart. That's wonderful. And Mom, I want to ask you something. Will you help me plan the wedding? Not just show up. Actually help. Pick flowers and taste cakes and all of it. Together." I felt tears prick my eyes. "I would love that." "Good. Because I can't imagine doing it without you." The trust released after 13 months. Richard called to confirm that the conditions had been met, that legally everything would transfer to Rachel according to the original timeline. I asked him to send me the documents anyway, the ones that outlined the conditions, filed them away in a drawer with Harold's old papers. A reminder, maybe, of how close we'd come to losing each other entirely. Rachel never knew when the trust released. Never asked. Just kept showing up Sunday after Sunday, because somewhere along the way, it had stopped being an obligation and become something she wanted. 1 year and 9 months after the day Rachel left me at Mercy Hills, we stood together in St. John's Church. She wore white satin and carried roses. Marcus waited at the altar looking nervous and happy, and I sat in the front row, wearing my best dress and the silver cross necklace Harold had given me, watching my daughter start her own family. During the reception, Rachel found me at my table. "Thank you," she said, kneeling beside my chair. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For making me work for your forgiveness instead of just handing it over. For loving me enough to hold me accountable." I cupped her face in my hands. "You're my daughter. That's what mothers do. We teach you how you deserve to be loved, and then we watch you become the person you were always meant to be. I love you, Mom. I love you too. Now go dance with your husband. This is your day." She kissed my cheek and floated back to the dance floor, and I sat there watching her spin in Marcus's arms, laughing with pure joy. Around me, the reception hummed with life. Cousins comparing baby photos, Patricia dominating a conversation about parish politics, Father Michael blessing the cake. This was grace, I thought. Not the absence of consequences, but the chance to earn back what you'd lost. The opportunity to prove you'd learned, changed, grown. Rachel had taken that chance, had shown up week after week, month after month, rebuilding trust brick by brick, and I had learned something too. That forgiveness doesn't mean weakness. That holding people accountable is its own form of love. That sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to be better than they were. Outside the reception hall windows, the Boulder Flatirons glowed pink in the sunset. Harold's mountains, the ones he'd loved, the ones that had witnessed our 43 years together. I wished he could be here to see this, to see the woman our daughter had become. But somehow, I thought he knew. Somehow I felt him in the laughter echoing off the walls, in the music pulling people onto the dance floor, in the love that filled every corner of this room. "We did good, Harold," I whispered to the gathering dark. "We did real good." And somewhere in my heart, I heard him agree. My daughter said we were going on a family trip, but she left me at a nursing home by the side of the road. I didn't argue, but when I got there, I made a phone call that made my daughter come running back to beg for forgiveness.